Alright, so today, live review of the Jameson Black Barrel from the Middleton Distillery. It's a Pinot Ricard product, blended Irish whiskey. 40% alcohol, 80 proof, chill filtered, yep. Color added, yep. Triple distilled. And this is a blend of grain whiskey that was matured 46 years in heavily recharred ex-bourbon barrels, and pot still whiskey that was aged 12 to 16 years in ex-sherry. And there's still more pot still in this than your like average Jameson product. So it's a mix of, it's a blended Irish whiskey. It's got grain whiskeys in there. So the grain whiskeys are again 46 years, heavily charred ex-bourbon, and the pot stills is 12 to 16 years in ex-sherry. So you got some older sherry and some younger bourbon, younger grain bourbon, and older pot still sherry. So that's kind of like what this comes out to. It's probably mostly heavily recharred ex-bourbon grain. That's why it's the black barrel, I suppose. And again, it's triple distilled, so it'll have a nice kind of silky, smooth mouthfeel, but also maybe kind of a little soft in flavor in the palate. It's kind of like what we expect anyway. Despite the fact that there's some old sherry in here. When we've had this before, I don't remember ever getting like really super duper deep sherry notes. But it's been a little while. We'll see how we get on with this. And again, this is almost assuredly color added here, despite the fact that there is some old sherry in here. Who knows if that sherry is even first fill? It might not be, but it's almost assured to be color added, chill filtered. But it is a little bit darker in color. Give that a minute. It's a little forward right now. Just a minute. But this one I think is only slightly more expensive than like your pre-standard Jameson offering. So I get the feeling that probably it's a pretty good value like that. But again, it's still it's not quite the upper shelf of whiskeys, and it is a blended whiskey, so we can't expect too much of it. But we ignore price when we rate things, so we rate them out of 100, 25 for aroma, 25 for palate, 25 for finish, 10 for texture, and 15 for my personal experience. While this might be a pretty good value for money, I imagine, we're not going to take into account that lower price point when we actually just judge the liquid. So, actually, the first note I'm getting right out of this immediately is banana. Um, really kind of similar to a Jack Daniel's banana. It does come across a little bit grainy. Um, I don't know if like since Jack Daniel's is like got that like charcoal filtering thing, and this is like heavily recharred, if maybe that's something to do with the banana flavor that you get, but that's maybe reading too much into this. But there's a little bit of banana on this up front. It's a little bit, again, it's a little bit grainy. You really do detect that grain whiskey in there. There's a little peakings. There's some peakings of the sherry. Maybe just a little touch of that, like dried fruit. But mostly grain forward. Um, Grain forward, some banana, maybe a slight touch of vanilla. Some of the grain comes across almost a little toasted, like toasted grains. Yeah, toasted greens, banana, just an kind of an echo of like dried fruit and maybe nuttiness. Yeah, if you dig deep, you can find that sherry in there, but it's not a main quality. It's not overly fruity. It's mostly grainy. Other than that, like a little bit of banana fruit and maybe like a little bit of dried fruit in the background. It's almost like kind of grainy up front with kind of just accents of other things. Okay. So the Jameson Black Barrel blended Irish whiskey on the palate. Cheers. Something really smooth on the palate, really great mouthfeel to it. That being said, it's like very grainy on the palate too. A little bit sweet. A little bit of those sweetnesses, a little bit of that like vanilla. Not really any sherry character to note. At least not on the outset. Finish is not particularly long. We'll call it like short plus. So what's my initial impression? Very, very like luscious mouthfeel, very smooth mouthfeel, great coating quality. The complexity of flavors, not quite there for me on this one so far. It is a step up in flavor from like maybe your average Jameson, and maybe only in the fact that it kind of weeds out maybe some of those bright, shiny, metallic characters that you might associate with Jameson's like regular offering. So it's a little bit better in that point of view. But it's not like presenting a whole lot of flavors right out at me. And again, it's an economically priced bottle. It's 40% alcohol. We're definitely in the kind of like value play kind of price point here. Yeah, mostly grainy, that little bit of sweetness, some nuttiness, a little bit of dried fruits in the background, and again, and a little bit of nuttiness in the background. Those like toasted grains. Nothing too new here. Just a little, it's like just a touch of sweetness from that grain. Just a touch of vanilla from the barrel. But not a whole lot. That banana is mostly faded now. Well, that's kind of like normal for me. Like even with Jack Daniels, you kind of get that banana note like right at first, or even with Woodford Reserve, you might get that banana note like right at the beginning, and it kind of fades away. Yeah, kind of still mostly grain forward for me. Yeah, mostly grain forward on the palate. A little bit of that banana is seeping into the palate though. Not really getting much other than like that little bit of sweetness from the grain, like the vanilla. On the finish, some spice comes in initially. You get a little bit of like sherry related spiciness and nuttiness. Just a slight bit of barrel on the finish too, kind of like an oak note. The overall intensity of the flavors in this particular bottle, not very high. They're kind of lower on the intensity scale. Again, this is kind of like maybe what we expect at 80 proof. The flavors are not terribly intense. The mouthfeel does a lot of work for it. It's very smooth and approachable. All sweet, pleasant flavors. No poking aspects, no challenging aspects. So let's go ahead and get in here. Get in here. Talk about the aroma. Again, it's only just a little bit sweet, a little bit toasty. Can we do it at 25 here? It's definitely not above 16. It's not great. Or 10 out of 50, out of 25 on the aroma. There's a good amount of notes in there, but they're low. They're kind of low intensity. We kind of go hunting a little bit to try to find something new and interesting. And even the most prominent characteristics are not the loudest, not terribly loud. We're left wanting a little bit. And the sherry, I don't know what percentage of the blend here has got that older sherry pot still, but it's really hard to get that sherry out of here. It's in there. You do get like echoes of sherry related notes, but it's not really enough to really provoke much thought. If I was to guess, it's kind of like, again, we're playing at 80 proof. There's lots of water dumped in here, and it's a dilution game a little bit, but that's what makes it economical. All right, the palette now. Again, you get a little bit of sweetness, low intensity, a little bit of like banana, low intensity, a little bit of vanilla, low intensity. Not a whole lot going on there. It doesn't dip though. The nice part about this one in particular is a lot of similar whiskeys at this price point will just dip into nothingness. You'll get no notes out of it, almost like you have water in your mouth. Somewhere in the mid palate, it'll just dip. I don't really get that here. There is a consistency of flavors straight from the arrival to the back palate, but the whole thing is not terribly expressive. It's quite low in intensity. Let's go with the palate. Um, the palate. 11. All right. We're going to talk about the finish. A little bit of like sugar-related spiciness at first. There's a bit of sweetness, a bit of banana, a bit of vanilla in there. Lingers into kind of like a oaky note. Still some of that grain is present. I think short plus is a fair assessment of the length. Finish maybe slightly better than everything else going on here. We'll call it 13. All right. At 10, we'll talk with the texture. Texture is really good here, actually. Mouth feels pretty damn good. Um, and again, that triple distillation is kind of coming in hot. That kind of smooth, kind of mouthfeel. Pretty good, pretty good. We'll call the texture 7 out of 10. Do you like the texture? Despite the fact that there's probably lots of water in here, texture's pretty good. All right, so F15, my personal subjective experience with this. So, what do I like about it? It does have a good amount of flavor for this price point. You do get like a good consistency of flavors. You don't get like a drop in flavor. We're talking about these whiskeys that are like a little bit on the cheaper end. Sometimes like you're dealing with like places in the palate where there's not a lot of flavor, very short finishes, not much on the aroma. And again, the aroma is not great, but it's got some things going on. The palate's not great, but it's got, 2 or 3 things going on. Finish is like maybe the best part. It's got a couple different characteristics, but it chops off a little soon. So it's not bad, but it's really not standing out much in any way. Maybe the most standout part of this is that for this price point, it doesn't have any kind of astringent qualities. There's no like notes that are challenging in like a bad way. There's no like metalliciness. There's no like bright shiny notes. But these aren't necessarily things that we would applaud it for. Just that like, hey, for this price, it doesn't have those things, so it's not so bad. But I wish that the sherry Pot still component of this was maybe a bit more expressive. I wish this was like 46% alcohol, maybe. There's some things that could be done here to kind of like make us, have a more engaging experience with it. But I think somewhat that's not the target market, maybe. It's kind of like a bit of a Jameson upgrade without, um, trying super duper to be like focused on the enthusiast or anything like that. It's kind of just like an upgrade, I think, on your standard Jameson bottle. If you want something that's like a little bit more, um, which it does a good job of that. Um, we call this at a 15. Is it forgettable? Almost. Um, but I think not quite. We'll call this 5, in my personal opinion. How about a 5? It's distinct enough. We'll call it a 5 out of 15. Um, nothing too wild going on here. So 5 and 7 and 13 and 11 and 10. It's 46. 46 out of 100. It's okay. It's an okay whiskey. Some people really think this is a great value whiskey. And an Irish whiskey, it kind of is. But it's also like a similar price point to a lot of like bourbons that you can get, like a higher alcohol, much more flavor impact. So in the realm of Irish whiskey, it may be like a good value if you want like an Irish whiskey kind of bottle. But there's definitely some bourbons, I think, that are like around this price that are going to provide like way more flavor and way more proof around the same price point. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, I guess.